Welcome to the Blue Hour. I'm Eric. This is Charlie. Every week we get together and talk about trends in the emerging tech space. This week we have some exciting news. We'll talk about new plugins on ChatGPT and just general competition between all these large language models. Let's kick it off. So,
Yeah.
as of this week, all ChatGPT Plus users are getting access to plugins, which are a new feature. They have a plugin store with third-party developers who created things built on top of ChatGPT. Somebody in this room built their own plugin who is now in that store unexpectedly. I don't know. You tell them what it is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, ultimately, when it comes to like these different chatbots, these ways of interfacing with these large language models that we've been talking about for a few weeks with OpenAI's ChatGPT, and then with Google's Bard and Microsoft's, Microsoft had put a lot of money into ChatGPT to take a version of ChatGPT's large language model and put it within Bing as Bing Chat specifically. And so it uses the same sort of high level functionality and large language model under the hood at Bing Chat, although it's branded differently. They sort of paid for that privilege, I guess you could say. But yeah, when it comes to OpenAI, they just released something that Eric's been working on. We've actually been, there were like 2-3 weeks ago, I had asked kind of coyly, should we talk about, and you're like, no, not yet. And what it is that we were talking about is ultimately, in this, there is within ChatGPT, you can interface with the language model just through the chat functionality. But they've, in the same way that we spoke about this last week, there are now these wrappers that are built on top of it, which allow for you to augment it really, really easily. There are all sorts of different things you can do. Really, really interesting random ones like playing chess against a novice or a grandmaster. There's the ability to book flights just through the chat prompt itself. So what it's actually doing is it's using a third-party app that somebody has created API connections. So they're connecting to the outside internet, and they're making it such that you can do specific functions. And what Eric had built a couple of weeks ago, or he's been building it for a while, and it's sort of been iterative. But it really harkens back to what he's been talking about for months now is prompt engineering, and it's called Prompt Perfect, which is a great name.
Thank you.
And you can find it on Twitter. Yeah, it's great. I remember when you come up with that. That was a really good name.
It's a surprising lack of thought went into it. I went over 2 names and I was like, Prompt Perfect kind of slaps.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's a sort of a testament to like how much you've thought about it. So I think a lot of effort went into it, despite it might not feel that way. But with Prompt Perfect, what it allows for you to do is before you type in a prompt, and ultimately what you're going to do is it's going to elicit a response from the large language model. But really, these large language models are faulty in a lot of ways. So even if it can query the internet, there are a lot of things that it will get wrong accidentally. So, for example, with Bard, which is Google's large language model right now, when you ask it, can you provide me with a summary of this YouTube video by providing you with a link? It says, yes, I can. Excuse me. And then you provide it a link and ask for a summary. I've done it maybe 15 times, and every single time it's provided me a summary for a completely different YouTube video that isn't specific to the link that I provided. And it does it with confidence. And so if you're not really paying attention, I'm sure it could be very easy to make very, very monumental mistakes because it's just literally hallucinating. I have no idea why it thinks that those YouTube videos are the ones that are in the URL, but they're not. And so none of them have been correct in 15 attempts. And so I think that, with all those hallucinations in mind, I don't know that that's the best word. That's just the word I've been using the last couple of days. I think that the main remedy to that is prompt engineering, because it can fix that. It allows for you to provide context in a way that large language language model really can interpret and understand, and it can provide it with context such that it can map those connections much more effectively. So I think that prompt engineering is of course important, but then to have it immediately within the large language model itself, you literally, for Prompt Perfect, the way that you activate it is you type perfect before the prompt you would like to have perfected, right? And it sounds okay when you say perfect, but it really, the right way to say it, I think, is perfect, because you're
Yeah.
asking it to perfect exactly what it is you're about to say. So, I haven't really been talking about it out loud at all, really, other than what we've spoken about. But a lot of these prompts, I'm sorry, these wrappers that are now within the plugin store, for ChatGPT 4, it doesn't even provide any sort of documentation on how to use them properly. So Eric spun up a website that explains literally all you have to do is type in perfect before whatever it is that you prompt, and then you'll watch it, right? So it'll say plugging into prompt perfect with Eric's logo, and then it'll show you the work it's doing, and it'll show you how it reorganized and provided context to that prompt, and then it'll provide you with a much more detailed, depending on what it is you're asking it for.
Yeah.
It'll either be more detailed or more thorough, or depending on what it is you want, it'll be more of something, or more accurate with more context, I guess, is overarching what it'll be.
Yeah. That's a good breakdown.
It's
It's
kind of a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah. I think the way it's described in the documentation or in the code is like it takes prompts that lack clarity and context and gives it additional clarity and context where it can, which seems extremely like something that everybody could do. But I think what I've discovered or thought about a lot is we're used to typing into Google where you need no context and no clarity. You can really just
Yeah.
put in a mishmash of words, and this allows you to just type perfect in front of it, and it'll turn something that's Googleable into a good prompt, like a pretty solid prompt. Um, and we've already, I think it's rolled out. We have no clue how many people actually subscribe to ChatGPT Plus, but a lot of people are using it right now. It's been a whirlwind of a
Yeah.
week and good feedback. It's been exciting. I encourage everybody to at least get access to plugins because there's a lot of cool things you can do,
Yeah, for
including
sure. I
using
think with
this app. Yeah.
Yeah, including use prompt perfect. And I haven't had a chance because I just got access to plugins yesterday afternoon around 3 p.m. Eastern. So I was up till 4 in the morning playing with these things and trying to like look around a little bit. But I haven't had a moment to go through and create an exhaustive list of all the ChatGPT plugins and sort of looking at all the different functions they serve. There are about 70 of them, and there are a whole bunch of different things, and they're very diverse. There are some random ones in there. Like there are some things that are very specific to specific nations. For example, there's one for Australia, there's one for Korea, and there's a lot of different stuff in there that's going to be really interesting to take a look at. But after a cursory glance, it doesn't look like anything is tailored toward prompt engineering, which I thought is fascinating, because that means that
Mhm.
my man Eric's prompt engineering plugin is the only prompt engineering plugin, which I think is a very good thing.
Yeah.
Also, the name is great, and so like we've been aggregating all of these media mentions. So over the last 3 days, since people have been getting access, so the 15th we had one, and it was very positive. Obviously, somebody was just saying, you're just saying really that ChatGPT is a little bit buggy, but he really likes prompt perfect and he's excited to use it more. And then yesterday it was lit up, right? So Twitter was all over the place. We had a whole bunch of different people reaching out about it, just sort of like posting whether they have one follower or 500 followers. There's a lot of variability here, and some of
Yeah.
them are using it to tailor better prompts for generative art, right? So they were using it to get much more detailed images. There were a couple of different examples of that, which is pretty cool. And also, these are in such disparate languages. One of them was in Cantonese, one of them was in Turkish. A few
Yeah.
of them were in. There are a lot of different languages being spoken. It's really, really cool. Most of them are in English,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I
and
think
some of them
there's
are
a
just video
surprising amount
using it.
of there's a product called SimilarWeb where you can look at web traffic for websites, and for openai.com there was a lot of people in Japan who I think use ChatGPT. And so there was almost instantly Japanese tweets. That was interesting. Um,
So cool,
yeah,
because I was going through. I added
very
these
cool.
all in chronologically, and so the first ones were written at 2 in the morning yesterday, and the last ones were written at like 11:45 at night. So there's like this really global presence of folks who are using it.
Yeah, it's kind of mind bending, honestly. And it's very cool that people have figured out how to use it with little documentation or guiding. Like just type the word perfect in front of a prompt and it works is a cool way to trigger it. And it seems to be connecting, at least on a small scale so far. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at least one for today. Obviously, I'm not like only in Twitter all day looking at these, but as we get them in and somebody highlights them, I post them in our channel here. But yeah, another one today. Um, yeah, people are impressed. I think they're taking it for granted to a certain extent because it's easy to. I mean, the logo is legit, the name is legit. It's easy to assume that it's like built by some very large software house, but it's really cool to know that that you put it together in the last couple of months. Really, it was a
Yeah.
part of the hackathon, right? That was sort of the
Yeah.
not the genesis of it. The idea was before that, but putting together the
Yeah.
plugin.
Yeah. The idea was before that. And then I did this 2-day hackathon for this AI newsletter or 2 AI newsletters that I was excited about. And I didn't know what I was going to build. I had developer access to plugins, and I've seen a lot of people who are like trying to get access. And I was wondering why I had it, but I've been an OpenAI user for a while, since last year, and even a little bit before. I was like in the playground there before ChatGPT came out. So I think part of it was people who had interacted or used OpenAI longer kind of got developer access first, or maybe they thought I was more of a development house. I have been using the API a lot this year. But since I had that access, I was like, I have to build a plugin. Like, so few people have access to do it. And so originally I was going to do some sort of connection with Google Calendar. And then I was like, why don't I just do what I know, which is enhancing prompts? And that led me down like, probably close to 30 hours of work figuring out in concert with ChatGPT. So the way that I did it was coding with ChatGPT and building a Python app. And I don't know how to write in Python. So like I basically learned Python through ChatGPT while building one of the first 100 plugins for ChatGPT, which is very much a testament to how good it is. Like, and we've talked about it a lot on here, but the potential for people to do things they wouldn't normally be able to do is tremendous. And like, this is real world. Like, this is proof that if you get good at prompt engineering and using these models, you could hypothetically build or do anything if you put enough time into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it definitely wasn't easy, and it took a lot of trial and error, debugging, learning new things like how to use a terminal and how to use Google App Engine and deploy remote apps to servers and stuff like that. But I learned all of it with ChatGPT and in a short time frame too, which is wild. So it was, yeah, I was very excited to get it done during that, and then very excited to get it. There was a deadline about a week and a half after that to submit them to OpenAI for the second round of plugins, which is what this is right now. And
Mm-hmm.
even more shocked, if I found the plugin in the plugin store. They didn't give me an email heads up; they just
Yeah.
threw it in there, which was wild. So it's
Yeah, it's interesting how opaque it is right now, right? It's like they had to release the original, I think 7 or 8, which was like Open Table, Kayak, like really,
yeah,
really big names, maybe
Instacart
7 or 8 of them,
yeah,
Instacart. And then they released like an additional 60 or so. When was that? A week ago? Not even?
yeah, less than a week Friday.
Friday. Yeah,
And
Friday.
they
And
hadn't even
yeah,
given access to everybody. It was like they
yeah.
said on Friday that they were going to give access to all Plus users over the next week. Then I figured out, now that I'm in a Slack, that they rolled it out to 20%, then 40%, and we're now at 70% of Plus users have the ability to enable them. So you have to go into settings, beta settings, because it is buggy and it's like technically in beta, and then you have to enable it before you can use the plugin store. So
Hmm.
I can say there's no real public numbers on how many people subscribe to Plus, and they won't say even to the people who are developing plugins. But based on the fact that the amount of inbound I'm getting already with the small, like not even 100% of plugin users having it enabled yet, and then people possibly not knowing about it yet, like there's a lot of plugin or a lot of Plus
Yeah.
users, like an insane amount. And we talked about it yesterday. There's rumor that there was 100 million users of ChatGPT earlier this year, like accounts created.
This month,
Uh,
as of this month. Yeah.
oh yeah, as of this month,
That number's from
which
this month.
is
Yeah. It's crazy.
it, just a remarkable amount of people. So
Yeah. So if it's a 1% of 100 million, that's a million folks who have
yeah,
70% of that 700,000 people have access to it, hypothetically. I have no
Yeah.
idea if 1% is too liberal a guess. I really don't know. It's $20 a month, so it might be too much. I really don't know. I know that I'm one of them, and I'm one of the 70%. So I'm able to use it, and I've been playing with it a lot since yesterday. Um,
Yeah. It's
when
objectively
it comes
insane
to
regardless.
yeah,
It's a lot of people.
yeah,
Yeah.
with the so I guess briefly, like why do you think you got plugin access? Like how many when you were building it for that hackathon, the vast majority of people couldn't test it, right? Because there were less than 100 people in the world who were building with the access to the plugins, right? There was very few people.
Yeah, I'm sure more people had developer access. I just don't know how many people were actually building, you know? And
Okay, that's fair.
that was part of the reason why I was like, I should do a plugin because they originally were going to make the hackathon for just plugins, and they were like, well, OpenAI can't
Oh,
give access to 1,000 developer passes because they part of the reason that it's so beta and such a small, like a smaller amount of developers, is that this can connect ChatGPT to the internet. There's a lot of things it can do, so they're like rolling it out very slowly and access very slowly and trying to ensure that like they can take as much safety precautions as possible. And they just made a thing where if you update your plugin, it automatically kicks it off the store so that they can review it before adding it again. So they're
yeah,
being very thorough as far as what they're allowing in, which is nice. I guess is probably good that Prompt Perfect is like fairly simple. There's not a crazy amount of complexity. Right now, there's no account creation thing. It's a free plugin that enhances your prompts. We'll change that here soon because we're going to have like a subscription plan. But yeah,
yeah. Before we get into the payments and what your costs are, I want to to take a quick step back. This is very reminiscent, and people have been making a comparison from 2008 when the App Store was released for Apple. So you're able to use your iPhone to download apps, which then can be purchased, right? So you're able to
yeah,
use a paid service through an app, and then Apple typically takes 30. At the time they were taking more, but now they very famously take 30% of those sales through the App Store by virtue of the fact that they're providing you with the marketplace with all those consumers. And so that's like a convenience fee that they have for all the developers. And this feels similar. There's been a lot of speculation that OpenAI is going to have a similar App Store model where people who have plugins will be able to have people subscribe to those plugins, and then OpenAI will just take a cut of that subscription service on top of it. But in looking through a lot of the competitors, not people who are building prompts, or not people who are building plugins exclusively, but looking at maybe 10 of the plugins and then about 30 other prompt engineering sort of tooling. There's certainly things that are freemium, and then there are different things that are subscription. But it's been interesting to see the way that they're actually monetizing them. Because there isn't really like one way to do it. It seems I think it's very simple from a user's perspective. Like I pay for like a weather app, for example, on my phone. It's 199 a month, or if it's $12 a year, whatever it might be. It's so easy with my fingerprint to just hit yes, and it's like I don't even have to think about the purchase of that thing. And
yeah,
so I think that that's probably the ideal use case that we'll see. But it's been pretty clear to based on what you've told me, that it's been pretty clear that it's unclear internally at OpenAI how they're going to actually roll that out. And so,
yeah.
despite the fact that you're in that private group with Slack, like you're thinking about sort of like monetization because you have costs here. And so, I want to know from you, like, what are the costs derived from? It's really very simple, right? It's just the fact that people are querying the OpenAI API to actually have it respond with their large language model in response to their prompt, right? Is it really that simple?
No, it's that, and well, it's there's two main costs. One is that because I use OpenAI's API to refine prompts, and the other is my remote servers that host the app. So I have like, yeah, it's a Python app that lives on App Engine, and that there's costs related to that, which are a little bit less, it seems, than as long as long as it doesn't get like overloaded, a little bit less than the Open API or OpenAI API costs, but it is fairly simple. It's just those two are the main ones for now.
Yeah. And they're relatively nominal, but think about like if we have 70% of users have access within the last week, and your costs are $10 a day for those API calls. As time elapses, it's going to increase. $10 a day, $300 a month, and these things add up pretty quickly. So I think the monetization is imminent, just so that you can keep the lights on. It's not like this is like Richard
Yeah.
Branson or whatever his name is, like, having fun with all this play around money. Like, you gotta run a business here.
Yeah. And I mean, it's pretty clear that the cost is always going to be more expensive than it is right now. Like we'll always have more users, more people are figuring out about it, and more people are getting access daily. There's a lot of uncertainty around how many people are actually going to be using it. like it, I'm assuming it's going to be a lot. And since it's the only prompt perfect, like the only thing that does prompt engineering natively in ChatGPT that's in the plugin store, it has a pretty good use case. And
Yeah,
yeah,
for
so
sure.
I'll be trying to prepare for that over the next week, and it'll be fun. It's exciting. It's like untilled soil. It's stressful. It's fun. It's unexpected, but you know, I think the reason we started this podcast is because, well, when we started talking about AI on this podcast, is we knew how much potential it had. We knew how much we enjoyed using it, and within 2 months of talking about it, uh, I'm now in like this weird less than 100 plugin developers who have published a plugin to ChatGPT, which is like the biggest uh, consumer app or the fastest growing consumer app of all time, which is fucking it's
Yeah,
wild. And I think we were right when we were like we should definitely talk more about AI because the the things you can do with it are crazy.
yeah, for sure. Um, Interestingly, so like I have like a much less interesting point to make around like the way that OpenAI is like regulating the implementation of these plugins. I think that it's really a testament to how you built it, despite the fact that you I can imagine you feel a little bit like an imposter. Um, there's probably a very rigorous process for making sure that these things are sort of above board. And so to make sure that, you had said actually looking through the analytics that they were testing it hard before it actually reached any OpenAI Plus users. And you could just
Yeah,
see that through the API calls that were being done, right? Or through the hosting service that you use. And so it's
yeah,
pretty cool to think that they stress tested it and then accepted it and shipped it as a plugin, one of the 70, right? Because I'm looking through a lot of these. I didn't have a chance to go through all of them exhaustively. And I went through and downloaded maybe 50 of them because the way that it works from a user perspective is you go in and you look at this marketplace and you then download them. And then that download allows for you to use them in prompts, and you can use 3 at a time. So if you have 50 downloaded, you can use 3 maximum. And then daisy chaining them to make it such that they all work within one prompt is a skill in and of itself because they're not explicit around you have to use perfect before, right? So
yeah,
I think that there's a lot of user experience here that could be improved upon, but again, it's in beta and it's only for people who pay for it. So it's kind of like the super users have access
yeah,
if they want. But all that is to say, they had released it, and then you go in and you implement this payment processing portal in the same way that we had seen in the OpenAI forum that a different team had done. I forget what their project was, but they had implemented a payment portal just to cover their costs and allow for there to be that OAuth sort of like implementations that you go log in somewhere, verify the fact that you're a paying member, then get redirected back, and then you have
yeah,
access to your maybe like higher band of bandwidth or whatever it might be, depending on how much you're paying. And when they had made that implementation and they shipped that change, they were then revoked from being a plugin, right? So I think that flow is very similar to what happens with Apple. Is like they have extremely because since it's their marketplace, they're extremely specific about who it is that they let ship there. And if you
yeah,
make a small change, even still, they want to make sure that it's not going to be some sort of malware or allow some sort of vulnerability that allows for somebody to
yeah,
log in and then you provide somebody access, to your remote access to your desktop or something like that. I don't know what the worst thing that could be that could happen there, but I do imagine
yeah,
that there will be a time when people are implementing payment portals or something like that, or even just making small bug fixes. It'll be interesting to see how quickly OpenAI is able to get those back on the docket. I'm
yeah.
interested to see that.
I think it's like very one-off cases now. I think they're pretty quick with it though, but it's
Cool.
very Wild West. It's
Yeah,
crazy,
I
man.
can
Yeah,
imagine. Yeah.
yeah,
And a lot of these plugins already have like large businesses, right? So some of them are like, do you provide text and it creates an audiobook or like random things? And those are
yeah,
already businesses that have raised money. And so this to them is a supplemental thing. Whereas there are existing businesses that are right now exist as only Google Chrome plugins, which are complete business models in and of themselves. And this is
yeah,
more in line with that. Or like just an iOS app that's entirely a business in and of itself it's just sort of more in line with that. So I think it's gonna be really interesting to see, when we come back next week to talk more about it. Um, so that was the boring thing. There was something else I wanted to talk about. Oh, I remember what it is. So you built this for ChatGPT, and then this week you were reached out to by somebody at Google who works on the Bing team, and this is all like
Somebody at
Google
Microsoft.
I'm sorry, where did I say?
You said Google.
Oh shit, sorry. No, it's definitely not Google.
It's
Because
Microsoft.
yeah, it's Microsoft. I'm sorry. Because Microsoft has their developer conference next week, Build,
Yeah.
which is like a huge conference in Seattle every year, and they have over 100,000 developers who go. So it's a huge conference.
Yeah.
And if you'll remember, a couple of weeks ago, we had said Microsoft had invested in OpenAI, and so as a result of that investment, then several weeks later, they then rolled out ChatGPT under the hood of Bing Chat. And so
Yeah.
they had asked you specifically, can we include prompt perfect in our announcement next week at Build, the developer conference?
I
And we've
know,
since
man.
had that conversation, and it went well, and we're going to be included. You're going to be included in that, and
I know.
it's and the functionality is one to one. So anything that works as a plugin on ChatGPT is going to work as a plugin within Bing Chat, which is really exciting because Bing Chat hasn't made any public announcements around any plugins or anything like that. And obviously there are questions around one-to-one compatibility and whether or not you need to rebuild things to make it compatible with Bing Chat. But it was very explicit that it's going to be one-to-one compatible. So this code will run inherently on Bing Chat, which is super convenient. And yeah, it allows for you to have that much larger of a addressable market
Yeah.
working with Bing Chat, right? So Bing's value
I know.
proposition is that it's connected to the internet, and the thing is that Bing Chat is free, and these plugins will be free. They won't be necessarily free. Some plugins can obviously have paid services because you need to be able to keep the
Yeah.
lights on, like we keep saying. But Bing Chat does not gatekeep access to plugins to paid
Yeah.
users, is my point. Bing Chat is available for anybody who uses Bing, which is anybody who has internet access can use it.
I know.
So the addressable market,
Yeah.
it's like the lid gets blown off immediately,
I know. It's
which is crazy.
shocking how many users we are potentially going to be serving. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. And very exciting. And,
Yeah, that was
seeing the
particularly
Prompt
wild.
Perfect logo at some big announcement. I don't know if it'll be featured in any press releases either, but pretty nuts. Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how it couldn't be. They asked us for two logos, right? They asked us for two versions. They asked for all this stuff. All of this stuff is completely and totally, it's like information that was provided to us before we signed an NDA. And so
Yeah.
so all of this is, I feel very confident in our ability to speak about these details specifically, not some other things necessarily,
Yeah.
but just to note that that we did,
Fucking crazy,
we do
man.
have
Yeah.
an NDA in place, and things are progressing well there. It's really exciting.
Yeah. It's super awesome, man. And building relationships with Bing is going to be cool. There's no date yet on the launch for that. It'll be just like a pre-announcement, but you make a very good point about addressable market. It's going
Yeah.
to be pretty crazy. Especially we'll have 100% of ChatGPT users having at least beta access to plugins, and then at some other determined time, just a straight up rollout of Prompt Perfect to however many people are on Bing, which is crazy. And
Wait, so was there remind me, maybe I missed it. Did Sam or somebody talk about how every user of ChatGPT is going to have access to plugins?
not yet, but it's their intention
Okay.
for sure. It's just but every user of ChatGPT Plus will have
Yeah.
access soon, and people will
Yeah.
slowly be figuring out about it. So that'll increase by a lot here soon, and then eventually, I'm assuming that it could be a while though. They're deliberate in the way that they're building stuff, and I think Plus came out January, and plugins, put that 5 months later. I wouldn't be surprised if it was another 5 to 6 months before all ChatGPT users get access, if not longer.
Yeah. I mean, if Bing is making this announcement and then rolling it out in the next 5 months, I mean, even if ChatGPT, I mean, under the hood of Bing, it's very, I mean, I guess it's easy to forget. It's not easy for us to forget, but it really is ChatGPT, and they're very quick to tell you that if you talk to the engineers there, regardless of the fact that when you query it and ask it, it won't tell you, which is really interesting to me, the way that they trained it to not like to usurp that fact. But nonetheless, even if it takes OpenAI that long, Bing releases it sooner to every user of Bing Chat who can use plugins, like then OpenAI is behind all of a sudden, and they
Yeah.
need to release it to all of their users, right? And their users don't equal the number of people who use Bing Chat, despite the fact that Bing Chat is a part of Bing, which is maybe the second or third largest search engine, which in reality is way beneath Bard, which is Google's AI,
Yeah.
and Google just has a larger addressable market for people who use it for a web searcher, and so it's just such an interesting, like, all constantly, like, despite the fact that OpenAI is the one we were speaking about the most, there's such a massive amount of like catch up and competition in these large language models, and
Yeah.
even though under the hood Bing is ChatGPT, it still seems to me as though they are competing with one another. Although from a builder's perspective, you can rinse and repeat. You're just going to be able to go prompt perfect to here, prompt perfect there, the exact same experience because it's all the same code, which is ideal, right?
Yeah. So ideal. It's exciting,
Yeah,
man.
pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's all I had. What do you think?
Yeah, that's good. I think I've got to run in a minute, but did
Nice.
you prepare? Did you turn on the oven and preheat before this in preparation for your hot take?
I think my hot take this week is pretty simple. It's like I think it's going to be important to take some time off sometimes. I was talking to somebody about this week. Is like it sometimes can feel really go go go, and it's fun to sometimes take a couple of days off. I'm looking forward to Memorial Day next
Yeah,
weekend and like sitting out in the sun, um, and doing no phone days would be really nice.
there you go.
That's
Yeah,
my hot take. Yeah. What about you?
yeah. I mean, it's been the debatably the weirdest week of my life with
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, I don't think it's as clear to the listeners, honestly. I don't
yeah,
think I don't think we explained it well enough to
I
like
know.
explain like the
I feel like
mental.
you're getting it. Other people in my life kind of get it ish, but like I don't think internally it's like almost screaming happening because
Yeah.
the fact that there's 100 million potential users of ChatGPT is wild, and there's just so many factors that have made me a little head crazy this week. So I think my hot take is like it's good when like people I think hear about good things happening to people who build things and they're like, "Oh, that's awesome," but really it's highly stressful, and I've been trying to measure that. Not easy, but it's good to be cognizant of it, and I'm very thankful to have you to talk to because there's you need somebody to talk to when things go crazy and somebody to help out, which is yeah. So
Yeah, it's fun.
get a friend if you're going to build stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I think that and the biggest concern really is it. We've spoken about this. Like the biggest concern is just the ability for it to scale, right? So like I know that the infrastructure itself is really sound only because you and I have spoken about it at length. And like it's gonna like horizontal scaling, for example, things like that. But then ultimately, it's also the cost. That's the thing that's the biggest concern, right? Is just the ability to keep the lights on.
Yeah. I mean, this thing
Yeah,
could potentially start costing a lot, like $1,000 a week to do. So, figuring that out, trying to be ahead of I'm just like trying to be prepared for that. And also uncertainty around whether or not there's going to be a payment gateway or modal in OpenAI. But, those are all things that we're figuring out. I feel like I have clarity now. The next 5 days will be interesting. I'm going to do some building and hopefully, yeah, we'll see. We'll be able to talk about it a lot more in the future.
yeah. Even next week, I
Yeah.
think it'll be interesting to check in on this again. Um, yeah, fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Really exciting. So cool, man. Well, let's. Oh yeah, thanks to Josiah Soren, our main
Yeah,
man.
dude.
Thanks, dude. And yeah, we'll catch you here next week. Anything else?
Nah, that's it, man. See you next
All
week.
right, cool. Awesome. All right. Ciao, ciao.